Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a concept that literally reshaped not just our cities, but our entire cultural identity. For the longest time, the big American story was all about moving west. More land, more space, a seemingly endless horizon. But what exactly happens when that horizontal frontier runs out? Well, we're going to look at how the American skyline isn't just a random collection of really tall buildings, but actually serves as this incredible vertical diary of the American soul.
So think about it like this. For most of American history, destiny meant expanding horizontally across the western frontier. Back in the 1800s, this idea of manifest destiny was just this powerful, almost gravitational belief that the country was meant to spread all the way across the continent. It was this really potent mix of nationalism and economics, the idea that free people, if you give them enough space and opportunity, will just endlessly build and grow. But by the early 20th century, the map looked completely different. The continental frontier had closed up, and the country had become incredibly urban and industrial. So if you're a culture that deeply, fundamentally believes your destiny is tied to expansion, what do you do when you literally run out of land? Well, you quietly flip your compass. You stop expanding out across the earth, and you start expanding up into the sky.
Part 1. Engineering the vertical myth.
Now, the skyscraper didn't just pop out of thin air as some poetic dream. It was a highly specific, practical fix. In the late 19th century, urban land was getting unbelievably expensive. To fit more people into the exact same footprint, you really had no choice but to build up. But the real game changer? The Great Chicago Fire of 1871. The absolutely urgent need to rebuild spurred massive technological leaps. By the 1880s, the home insurance building swapped out heavy masonry for a metal frame. And that kicked off a race that quickly shifted over to New York, eventually giving us distinctly American icons like the Flatiron and Woolworth buildings.
So the crucial takeaway here is that while these wild engineering feats, we're talking steel skeletons, safe passenger elevators, pressurized plumbing, sure, they solved the practical problem of expensive land, but culturally, they did something much bigger. For a young country that had honestly long felt a bit insecure sitting next to Europe's ancient palaces and grand cathedrals, the skyscraper was the ultimate cure. It was tall, it was aggressive, and it was entirely new. America finally had its very own architectural monument to show off to the world.
Part 2. Altars of American Capitalism.
It didn't take long for these towering new monuments to completely evolve in the public imagination. Sociologists actually point out how early skyscrapers borrowed heavily from Gothic cathedrals in their vertical emphasis. They basically turned commercial office buildings into literal monuments to work, progress, and the free market. As some historians so perfectly put it, this was capitalism materialized in steel and glass, a physical altar to a society's highest ideals.
These early skyscrapers physically embodied this really fascinating concept known as aesthetic individualism. It was an architectural style defined by clean lines, strong verticals, and highly disciplined ornament. It expressed a sort of secular Protestant ethic, right? Sober, rational, efficient, yet always reaching higher. And in American culture, this quickly framed the architects and developers as the new frontier pioneers, pushing the limits. You start seeing novels, films, and comic books using these monumental buildings as backdrops for stories about bold individuals standing head and shoulders above the crowd, literally and metaphorically.
But watch how this shifts. As society changed throughout the 20th century, the buildings morphed right along with it. The aesthetic went from early towers made of heavy, solid stone, representing a shared national project of hard work, into something entirely different. Notice the rise of those smooth, reflective glass curtain walls. Sociologists suggest this perfectly parallels a shift from an ethic of productive capitalism toward a culture that's, frankly, obsessed with image and consumption. The building itself almost disappears into its own reflection, mirroring a society preoccupied with individual lifestyle and personal branding.
Part 3. The bar chart skyline. Those reflective glass facades, they also mirror some deeply fascinating economic realities. Economists neutrally observe that skylines basically act as three-dimensional graphs of capital concentration. Literally, think of the skyline as a giant bar chart. The taller the tower, the denser the money beneath it. These soaring heights closely track the cycles of speculation, the booms, and the busts. When you're looking at downtown Chicago or Manhattan, you aren't just taking in beautiful architecture, you are looking at a literal, physical map of property values.
Looking objectively at this academic observation, we see a pretty profound dual symbolism. For a lot of people, the skyscraper is the ultimate monument to opportunity, the physical embodiment of the idea that anyone, anywhere, can start at street level and rise to the very top. But for others, it represents a monument to concentration. It symbolizes a physical distance, where immense power and decision-making happen far above the everyday people who are living with the consequences on the ground. It's a striking visual of inequality built directly into the clouds.
Part 4. The global vertical diary.
So what does all of this tell us? Every single new record-breaking tower reinforces a specific set of core beliefs. The old manifest destiny promised us that space would never limit us. The new vertical destiny says that when we run out of land, hey, we simply create new space in the air. It declares that limits are just engineering problems waiting to be solved, that elevation intrinsically equals importance, and that to be truly modern is to live faster, more compressed, and high above the rest of the world.
But there's a real tension right now. The skyscraper is no longer a uniquely American phenomenon. Places like Dubai, Shanghai, and beyond are furiously building their own vertical myths. And our sources pose a really critical question here. Is the American skyscraper still distinctive? Does it still symbolize that unique brand of ambition? Or has it dissolved into just another standardized style in a massive global market of steel and glass? The frontier, it seems, has completely gone global.
Because ultimately, the skyscraper acts as a mirror. If you only see height and engineering, well, that's what you value. If you see greed and inequality, that's what you fear. And if you see pure possibility and boundless energy, that is what you hope for. Vertical manifest destiny isn't just some dusty historical label from a textbook. It's the living story of a nation that wants to find itself by endless land and now defines itself by endless height. So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with this question to ponder. When you look at a skyline like New York, what part of yourself do you feel it reflects back at you? What do you see in this vertical diary of the soul? Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.